No, move your chair.
We're live.
Good afternoon, friends. We're glad that you've joined us this afternoon for conversation with Darnell and Darrell St. Romain. We continue our conversation with Darnell and Darrell St. Romain. We continue our conversation with Darnell and Darrell St. Romain.
We're just going to keep going in a circle. There it is.
Okay, technology, ain't it wonderful?
Yes. Yes. Please.
So we're going to continue our conversation that we started last week in worship around race and racism. And you've already met Darnell last week in worship. And today we're honored to be joined by his brother, Darrell. Darnell, as you know, is actually on the right of your screen, and Darrell is on the left of your screen, just so you can keep them straight. We invite you as we go along. We got about 20 or 30 minutes here together. We invite you to submit any questions that come up in the comments, and we'll be happy to get to those as we can. I want to start by going back to something that came up in last week's conversation. Two quotes from that Darnell pulled from James Baldwin. One, that we have only been a nation since 1964. And the second, that America created the Negro I'm paraphrasing here, in 1619, and still in 2020, we don't know what to do with it. So you can pick whichever one of those.
I'm going to address the America has not been a nation until 1964. Actually, that's not Baldwin. That is a compilation of two professors from Louisiana State University, one being Dr. Leonard Moore, who's now at the University of Texas. He is a history professor. And the other being Dr. James Herndon, who is a poli-sci professor. And so the argument is,
I apologize for the misattribution.
Oh yeah, no, that's fine, Jeffrey. The argument is, if we are a nation where humanity is given certain inalienable rights, then when did everybody get those rights? Okay, so 1964 was the Voting Rights Act.
Okay.
And then you had a Civil Rights Act in 65, and you had another Civil Rights Act in 68. Okay. So I just want to note the 68 Act was enacted 6 nights after King was assassinated. So it took only 6 nights of protests in 68, and now we're on the 12th night of protests in 2020. But somebody not listening, somebody behind a fence. Okay. So now, if you want those rights for all people, then that's the only time the nation has really been a nation. Does that make sense?
Sure. I mean, the Constitution sets up this inescapable inequality from the beginning, right? All men, I'm quoting, but all persons are created equal, except this whole class of persons that are not equal, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That meant free white men.
Right.
That's what it was.
Yes,
Really.
exactly what it meant. Free white men. And they knew what they were saying. They knew exactly, because they could only conceive of a nation by white men, for white men. Their own women, white women, had to march for their rights to vote.
Right.
Some 40 years earlier, from 1964. So that's not a free nation. So that's where I am referencing. Reverend Al Sharpton on Thursday at the eulogy for the memorial of George Floyd said, we're going to have a march on August 28, 2020, which is the anniversary of Dr. Martin Luther King's famous I Have a Dream speech, which people only take that part from it. but people should really read the whole message to get what he's about. And he said, we're going to get America right for the first time. A very interesting statement that many people did not catch on to. You can see by the audience reaction, they didn't catch what he was saying. Indeed, I say he's right. We are still struggling to do this experiment. We are nearing 250 years as a nation, and we have not gotten this right. And Ben Franklin said at the very beginning, we have a democracy or a republic. I can't remember which one. If we can keep it, if we can keep it. That's being threatened. Again, somebody is behind a fence right now. So the James Baldwin quote. Yes, I'm going to read the exact quote with some censorship here.
Okay.
And I quote James Baldwin. Now, you need to understand before I say this quote that James Baldwin did a series of lectures in London and debates. He also did a series of interviews on the Dick Cavett show. Okay. Yes. And so if you want to know the full context of this, because this is an evolving concept for Baldwin, as you know, who left America in the 1940s to go live in Paris. It seems like any artist that's an artist, and no matter what time in history, went through Paris. For whatever reason, I can't explain that. Coco de Chanel, Igor Stravinsky, any other people, Wagner passed through Paris, right? So a lot of people have passed through Paris. And so Baldwin is
France,
not Paris. After he has an event in his life where he's sitting at a diner and he is asking for a meal. And the waitress, the server, says, "We don't serve Negroes." Now, to Baldwin, this is a shock. And in the midst of his anger, his rage, he throws the glass that's sitting in front of him. The server, waitress, moves out the way, and the glass shatters the mirror behind the server, waitress. He says he has a fog. He can't remember what happens next. He only remembers getting out of the diner. He doesn't remember how he got out of the diner, where he ended up after the diner, but he knew from his anger and rage that America was going to kill him. Not because a person would do it to him, simply because of the anger he had inside for the country he lived. Does that make sense? And so while he's off in Paris discovering himself, which I think is what Paris allows a person to do. I'm just putting that out there, discover themselves. He says, what white people have to do is try and find out in their own hearts why it is necessary to have a Negro in the first place. Because I am not a Negro, I am a man. But if you think I am a Negro, it means you, white people, need it. That's the quote. That is a very heavy quote. And if you go on, Netflix is streaming right now on Netflix, the documentary, I Am Not Your Negro, which puts together all of these lectures and debates from London and several interviews from the Dick Cavett show. It's about 90 minutes. And you can understand Baldwin's concept of race. And notice I said concept. It's not a genetic thing. It is a social construct with social contracts, race in America. So he is trying to understand why his country does not love him. That's what he's about. And he's come to the conclusion that whiteness created blackness. Now, I said last week that whiteness was like a blank piece of paper and you can draw anything on it. What I didn't say was what whiteness really represents. Whiteness really represents power. Blackness represents anything that is brute, that is ugly, anything that we can put on a person that projects our fears as a white person. So that's what blackness is.
Yeah. Would it be fair to say that the construct of the Negro that Baldwin is talking about is a way of othering the black.
Yes. So you have to set up a dichotomy first, a false dichotomy, mind you.
Right. And in terms of your piece of paper analogy, it's a way of moving them off the paper.
Yes.
So that they are in another category.
Exactly.
All right. I want to make sure that we get on to some other questions. Cynthia Astle asks, what black writers and columnists should we white folks be reading to help us understand black culture and thinking? Now, while you're thinking about that, Tom Bainham, quick draw McGraw there, jumped in and said, definitely Baldwin and Toni Morrison, Eugene Robinson, and then James Cone.
Yes, and I'm gonna take it back further. If you want to be in black culture, you need to start with the first ones that were able to write and be published in America. So Frederick Douglass,
Jane Lawrence,
Harriet Tubman, okay, and then there's kind of a dearth. There's kind of a dearth till 1903. We want to talk about W.E.B. Du Bois, Souls of Black Folks, right? Which you need to understand is a tempered writing because he is still being controlled by the powers that be. Okay, so he is the first African American in the U.S. to get a PhD in sociology. But you got to understand, in order for you to write and get a PhD, people are censoring your writing. Okay, so. Yes, Brother Jeffrey, you as a white male know that other white males want you to say certain things.
Yes. White males with more power than I have.
Yes.
Yes.
And then the Harlem Renaissance writers.
All those writers.
The playwrights, not just the poets and the dramatists, everybody. And so I don't know if people know this, but Baldwin and Nikki Giovanni lived together for a point in time in New York. They shared an apartment together. So Nikki Giovanni, we need to read her. There are a lot of black women writers that need to come out. Toni Morrison. Ooh, and let's talk about in the 70s where we don't have a lot of black writing, but you have a lot of people that are considered militarized. We weren't militarized. I'll just say that. But you need to read Angela Davis, That is black intellectual thought at its finest. So read the plays. A Raisin in the Sun. I'm trying to think of another one. I can't remember. But all the Harlem Renaissance.
Now, Tom also mentioned Michael Eric Dyson and Eddie Glaude Jr. I don't know these two folks. Can you?
Michael Eric Dyson is a sociologist by training, and he is a huge intellectual thought concept of about criminal reform and how this mass incarceration is playing into our culture, are making it devoid of what it could be. What was the other name?
Eddie Glaude Jr. Sorry.
No, I have.
Okay, well, maybe Tom can post something in the comments about.
Yeah, please do, Tom. But Michael Eric Dyson also has a way of including recent examples from black culture in his writing. Hip hop artists, Beyonce, Kanye. He takes their lyrics in particular and dissects them and tries to get us to understand. Now, I saw Michael Eric Dyson preach here in Dallas at St. Luke United Methodist Community Church in Dallas. So he is a gifted preacher as well.
Yeah. Now, Tom Bainham mentioned James Cone. I also want to mention a couple womanist theologians like Dolores William, and one of my favorites, M. Sean Copeland. I think those two women bring some very rich perspectives from a theological, not necessarily cultural, but they're definitely riding out of their cultural center, just like James Cone is, and they're bringing their.
Define the term womanist for those who don't know what we mean when we say womanist.
I'm sorry. Yes, a womanist theologian is basically a black female. So because they identify at an intersection of marginalities, both female and black, they do not identify themselves as feminist theologians, because feminist theology is basically white feminist theology. Again, here's the blank paper, right? Feminist, that's just like normal, generic feminist, right? Well, no, it's actually, their point is it's white feminist theology. And so we see emerging in the late 80s, really in the 90s and 2000s, we're in the second generation of womanist theologians now. People like Dolores Williams, who's she's one of the first voices to emerge. In Latina theology, then we have with Isasi Maria Idas Mujerista theology, which is writing from a Latina, perspective. To just throw that in. Now,
I think we would call Dolores Williams a mother.
Well, I was going to say grandmother, but I didn't know.
I think we would just call her a mother.
Okay.
Right? I mean, that's right.
Now, Kelly Brown Douglas is one who's writing right now. She's second generation womanist. Tom Council, you started to write a question there. Explain what you meant when you said, and then it got cut off. So if you want to jump in and finish that out, I would love for that. Tom Bainham says that I guess Eddie Glaw Jr. is a professor at Princeton and a commentator on MSNBC.
Okay. I want to point out there are a lot of black thought that happened in the 1970s that was just lost from society because at that time they were in jail or they had to flee the country for their own protection. So we lost a whole generation of black thought. So you have Martin Luther King in 1968, but then there's a period of 10 years, the 1970s, where there's really nobody that you can point to of who is speaking for the black culture. Take time to listen to the music. And rap, hip hop, R&B, black gospel music. Those will give you an insight to the culture. So, yeah.
If you have young teenagers at home, white teenagers at home, they know more about black culture than black teenagers at home. Because they're the ones buying the music. That's just the way it is. Yeah, and so when Darnell says there's this lack of leadership, is what he's trying to say between after Martin was killed and going on into the 70s. This is nothing anew for the struggle in America for black folks. If when you bring people over from a land where you take away their name, where you make sure that they have children in this country, then you kill off the first generation. It's the same thing that has happened with the leadership. J. Edgar Hoover was so afraid of somebody who could unite the black race. So everyone who came to some type of notoriety was either harassed, killed, or they had to leave. And so this is why you want to get this intellect out of the way to make sure they have no one to follow. And so what he did with the Black Panthers is just unexcusable. because they were not a militarized group. I mean, if you thought that was it at the height of it, it wasn't that many people. But they actually thought they could overtake the U.S. military. Come on now, that's going to happen.
I read today, interestingly, that James Baldwin's FBI file. Now, this is on Wikipedia. I mean, I'm not.
Okay.
James Baldwin's FBI file contains 1,884 pages. Okay. By contrast, Richard Wright, 276 pages. Truman Capote, 110 pages. And Henry Miller, 9.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, all those are,
But you go after people that really are your people, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Go after people that really are your people. I'm just going to be blatantly honest. J. Edgar Hoover has some Black ethnicity in him. So,
What?
Oh, yeah.
We're not going to go too much into that, though.
Say that again, Joe.
We're not going to go too much into that.
Okay. That's good.
We don't have time.
We got some other questions coming up. So, Susie Bird.
Oh,
Shout out to Susie. Glad. She says, say more on how white teenagers know more about Black culture.
Yes, it's simply a money thing. So if you have internet access in your home, if you have an iPhone, an iPad, or what have you, then you're able to download, stream, watch the videos of Black culture. If you're living in South Dallas and you have no internet access to your home, you have no computer in your home, there's really no way for you to consume culture unless you're at school. That's what we're after. So who can afford to actually listen to it? Mm-hmm. Who can afford a Tidal subscription?
And they record companies are catering to white teenagers more so than Black teenagers, because that is where the money is, or they will provide more money, shall I say.
Okay, I want to pick up on this money thing because Tom Council has asked a question that relates to that. One, he says, it's been many years since I read Black Like Me by John Howard Griffin. Is it worth reading now? That's maybe, just yes or no. A second question, though, and this goes back to what you said last week and the money issue. What did you mean when you said ABC's Good Morning is racist?
Yeah,
I mean, that's not actually quite what you said, but
I said when I wake up, I'll requote myself. I said when I wake up in the morning and turn on the TV, I participate in a racist system by watching Good Morning America. And so Good Morning America controls the images I see. Good Morning America controls the words that the broadcasters will say. Good Morning America controls how interviews are spliced. The broadcaster has nothing to do with that. Okay, so the people behind the scenes making the decisions that you never see are not people that look like me. That's what I mean. So the media is controlled, and it's not controlled by people that looks like me. So when you wake up and you turn on Good Morning America, when you turn on the Today Show, when you turn on CBS This Morning, or when you turn on Joe Scarborough or whoever you want to watch in the morning, all those images are controlled. They might be providing commentary, and that might be their own words, but a lot of the script is already controlled before they even wake up and go to the studio, because it was written the night before.
So this is a good segue, I think, or a hat tip, I don't know what, to what we want to start doing in the coming weeks. Is it fair to say that Good Morning America is not racist in an overt sense that we think of something being racist? But what you're saying is that it is immersed in systemic racism. It goes back to, if only white people who only see a blank page and don't see the water they're swimming in are making all the decisions, then the decisions are going to be tilted towards the blank page, right? they are not going to see the way that they are othering or excluding or not acknowledging, et cetera, et cetera. Is that a fair characterization?
Right.
So one of the things that we want to do with this time, starting next week, we're going to introduce now, going to pull on James Baldwin again.
I love him.
No, I like him too. We're going to start a series, a weekly series, Sundays at 4 o'clock, called Face to Face with Racism. And this comes out of James Baldwin, who said, "You cannot change what you do not face."
Amen. Amen.
And so what we're talking about doing is changing some of these ways in which racism goes unseen, in which racism is implicitly accepted because it seems socially normal. Okay?
Covert white supremacy.
Covert white supremacy. And so we want to offer a time each week that we come face to face with that. So, for example, next week, our topic is going to be color blindness. Now, I don't want to start unpacking that now, okay, but I'm just putting it out there. We're going to start, we want to talk about how color blindness is covert white supremacy and how it contributes to racism. I want to squeeze in 2 more questions before we bring our time to a close here. Cynthia asks, does it help for white folks to tell black folks that we're sorry for racism now? Is that what we need to do to establish new relationships?
I wouldn't say that it does not help. But I can tell you now, for the past week, your black friends are exhausted from talking to white friends about the situation. And I'm not trying to be funny.
I'm sorry to drag you out on a Sunday afternoon to talk.
No. I can't stop laughing.
Mea culpa.
But the thing is, I think what whites need to really understand is this is not an event.
Right.
This is a way of life that benefits only one group of people. Now, don't get me wrong. We're not trying to play victims. We're not trying to blame anybody. We're trying to succeed just as everybody else is trying to succeed. But when we have events like this, and it's nice to know that maybe the tide has changed a bit, that people are recognizing, okay, this man died on TV, and this is wrong. And so this is a good place to start. Now, we're not asking you to apologize for things that you have no control over. We're just asking you to realize and see how the system works and how it benefits one group over another.
Today on TV, the Auxiliary Bishop of Dallas, Bishop Greg Kelly, had a quote from Brian Massingale. He is a professor at Fordham University. He is a black man. And he said, all they need to do right now is just be. Educate yourselves first. We don't need action. And I counsel people, be careful with putting things in writing. Don't pick up the phone and call somebody, because what you put in writing will not be the right thing. I can tell you that 100% right now. It will not be the right thing to text. So call your friends. Don't leave a paper trail. Yes, educate yourself. And your congregation has been doing that. I was very impressed when you told me y'all had a small group going on white fragility. I know that is a difficult,
very difficult,
challenging read.
Yeah, and we're going to start another one and open that up to a larger group in the congregation, or anybody really that wants to start us to walk through that book with us. Your comment about writing maybe speaks to this last question, and I don't know if you have an answer to this. Annalise Herder asked, is there a Black university publishing house or press that is less censored than a whiter publishing house like LSU Press or UNC Press? And if so, what is the name of that press?
I would qualify that by saying every writing is censored. Every single piece of writing is censored that is published. It goes through many hands, and it's already censored before it even gets to the publisher, who will tear it up again.
Right.
So I don't know if there are somebody out there in the universe will have to help me. There were Black-owned magazines that were national, but sadly that's not the case anymore. But as far as university presses or press houses, I don't know in particular. So the writing down of things is a very European idea. We spoke things from generation to generation. That's the Black culture. It's passed down by word of mouth, right? So you had to sit at the feet of your elders to learn.
See, that's what I'm going to do with my dissertation. I'm just going to speak it forward instead of.
Go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
Well, listen, we've come to the end of our time together. It's gone very fast.
Oh yeah.
You remind me, though, in your words just a few minutes ago, as an educator, that education is a painful process. Education, I like etymology. Education comes from the Latin ex ducere, which means to lead out.
Yes, right.
Now, what this means is you got to leave your native land, right? You got to leave what you know and come into what you don't know.
Amen. Amen.
And that's painful. So these Sunday afternoon broadcasts that we're going to do, we hope, are the beginning of an education process for us, so that we can be led out of what we know and into what we don't know.
Amen.
So I thank you all for your time this afternoon. Look forward to the next time we're in conversation together. And I hope you can get some rest.
Brother Jeffrey, we thank you for opening up your space and your platform to have us on. We appreciate that.
Oh, it's our pleasure and really our honor. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey.